Okay, so a very good morning, I bid to all. My name is Pritpal. I'm the application specialist from ITS. And first of all, I'd like to thank you all for giving ITS this opportunity to present in your technical talk session. Yeah, and today I'll be presenting Azure Cielo 6, which is a new innovative qPCR instrument. So before I begin, I'd just like to introduce my company. So we are from ITS Malaysia. Interscience Malaysia was established in 1978. So we've been in Malaysia for 44 years now. And what do? We are essentially a medical equipment and service provider. We also provide scientific equipment for the entire Malaysia. And if you'd like to pay us a visit, we are currently located in Kota Kemuning, Shah Alam. Okay, so this is what we'll be doing today. We'll be going through the Azure Cielo, which is a new qPCR system. Now, let's jump into the big question. What should you look for when you want to purchase a qPCR system? After all, a qPCR system is a big investment for any lab, right? So to answer this question, we go back to the Mikey guidelines. I know you've had a session on Mikey guidelines this morning, yeah? So Mikey essentially is a set of guidelines that describe the minimum information that you need from your qPCR experiments. So when you're choosing a qPCR instruments, you need to ensure your qPCR instrument can cope with this information, right? Essentially, it boils down to this. Your qPCR system needs to be of a high performance. It needs to be sensitive. You want to be able to detect targets that are low in quantity. If you don't, you will get false negative samples. And in terms of performance, you also want a qPCR system that is fast. Because remember, the longer you incubate your samples and your targets in your qPCR system, the more degradation that you have to deal with. Okay, so that's performance. Then you also want trustworthy data from your qPCR system. You want reproducible and uniform data. So, say for example, if you're running the same assay with the same set of samples at different time points, by right, you should be getting the same results. It should be reproducible. Okay. And finally, your qPCR system has to be flexible. You should be able to run whichever application you want. You should be able to run however many assays that you want. Okay. So in that terms, it has to be flexible. So when you are making the decision to purchase a qPCR system, keep all these points in mind and then make an informed decision. Okay. So this is the Azure Cielo. Let's look at what it has to offer. The Azure Cielo is completely manufactured in USA by Azure Biosystems. It comes in two different configurations. You can have it in either a 3-channel version or a 6-channel version. And if you're doing gene expression studies, it can detect 1.5-fold differences in gene expression. That's quite low. Okay. Connection wise, it can connect to the Ethernet. You can connect it to a Wi-Fi, and you can also connect it to an external PC. So you have remote access with this machine. Here, this is what it looks like on the outside. This is the exterior. It has a large color touchscreen, high resolution touchscreen screen. And then you have a USB Type A port, which you can use to import your data. And the machine itself is actually very compact. Even more so when you consider the fact that it can be used as a standalone machine. Okay, you don't necessarily need to connect it to a PC. So here are all the product specifications at a glance. I won't be going into each one of these, but I will be more than happy to provide you with a soft copy of the spec sheet if you would like one. Okay, moving on. So this is the important bit. Let's look at some of the key Azure Cielo features. What sets it apart from all the other qPCR systems in the market right now? So the first is its innovative and high performance optical design. The Azure Cielo, right, was designed around individual well scanning. What this means is each and every well in the 96 well plate is excited individually, and then the emissions from each well are recorded individually. Okay, and the machine does this for 16 wells simultaneously. So essentially, right, there are two sets of 16 fiber optics. The first set excites 16 wells, and then the second set records the emission from 16 wells. And when you do this, what happens is that you end up with an extremely sensitive equipment. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about: individual well scanning. Um, so it's designed in a way that it ensures each well is evenly illuminated, and none of this excitation light falls outside of the well. This reduces background noise. Also, in each and every one of these well, the machine is actually collecting close to 100,000 data points. Most other machines in the market now, they make do with maybe one data point per well. So again, this is going to translate to a very high sensitivity. Okay, what else is different? The Azure Cielo has a very high interwell uniformity. Interwell uniformity refers to temperature regulation. And let me tell you, temperature regulation is at the heart of a qPCR system. Okay, temperature regulation is very important for your primer binding. Temperature regulation is very, very important for proper performance of your um, enzymes. Okay, and in each qPCR system, there will be a thermal block which takes care of the temperatures. And in the Azure thermal block, there are 6 malopeltiers. Okay, it is premium. Having 6 malopeltiers instead of 1, 2, or even 3 malopeltiers means you regulate the temperature very well in each of your wells. Each of your samples will get the intended cycling temperatures. Okay, with this you can eliminate you can eliminate any bias in your experiment. So that's interval uniformity. You've also got very good, sorry, you've also got very good instrument to instrument uniformity. What this data shows you is that if you were to repeat your experiments on different Azure Cielo instruments while maintaining everything else the same, for example, same assay, same samples, you will get same results. Okay, it just means the machine is very uniform. So now, so far, we've seen that the Azure Cielo emphasizes a lot on single well scanning. It has a very sensitive design. It also puts a lot of emphasis on temperature regulation. So, what do all these key features mean to your research? How do you benefit from them? So, first, you will be able to detect CQ earlier, even for single copy targets. Um, so this graph here shows you a comparison between the Azure Cielo and a competitor. And you can see for the Azure Cielo, it can detect single copy targets more than 90% of the time, whereas the competitor is only detecting single copy targets about 80% of the time. Okay. And look at the average CQs of the Azure Cielo. The Azure Cielo gives you CQs of about 36. This is 2 cycles earlier than the competitor, which is about 38. Okay, again, this is in part due to the sensitive design of the Azure Cielo. Okay. And then this data, right, was provided to us by the manufacturers themselves, by Azure. So in ITS, we have done some of our own experiments. So what we did was we compared the Azure Cielo to another competitor qPCR. We did SARS-CoV-2 detection using these two machines. And what we found was that the Azure Cielo was able to detect a lot more positive samples. You see in the blue box here, compared to that of the competitor in the pink box. So if you look at the first row, sample number 60, this was a negative sample in the competitor brand, but the Azure Cielo managed to detect it as positive. It is actually a very low positive sample. The CQs are 36 and 38. Okay, so this is something that we would like to avoid in the qPCR machine, because in a competitor's brand, this is essentially a false negative result. Okay, right. What else can you do? So if you're doing gene expression studies, you will be able to detect as small as a 1.5-fold difference in gene expression. This is again quite impressive. Okay, the Azure Cielo also has an optical design that eliminates the need for ROX. Now, ROX is a normalizing dye. Okay, certain qPCR instruments, especially the older ones that use a single light source, will have a lot of well-to-well variation. Okay, and to overcome the well-to-well variation, they are forced to use a normalizing dye such as ROX. So one of their dye channels will be reserved for the ROX dye, and say the remaining 5 channels they can use for their targets. But in the Azure Cielo, since we are using single well scanning and we are collecting 100,000 data points per well, we don't need a ROX dye. And since we don't need a ROX dye, you can do a true 6-target multiplex. Okay, so what this data here is showing you is that even without the ROX dye, you are getting very good CQ values. CQ mean is 17.54, and your standard deviation is only 0.02. This is without a normalizing dye. So that's quite good. Okay, moving on. Multiplexing capability without crosstalk. So by now, you know that the Azure can do a 6-target multiplex. What is crosstalk? Crosstalk happens when fluorescence bleeds over from one channel to another. For example, you have fluorescence bleeding over from the FEM channel to the hex channel. Again, this is quite prevalent in some qPCR instruments that use entire plate scanning. They scan an entire plate as a whole, right? But in Azure, remember, there are specific emission filters and specific excitation filters. And when you couple this together with the single well scanning, right, there is very little bleed over. Okay, so your 6-target multiplex would look something like this. You will have very good R-square values for all of your targets. Okay, all right. Simultaneous scanning for quick imaging. So you know the Azure Cielo scans 16 wells at a time. Okay, so to scan an entire 96 well plate, the Azure will only have to perform 6 scans. Okay, you'll have to move 6 times, and it can accomplish the 6 scans in 9 seconds for all 6 channels. So it's quite fast. It basically means your runs on the Azure will be faster than other regular qPCR instruments. Okay, so those are some of the key benefits. There are some other benefits as well. So number one, reproducibility from run to run. What this data here is showing you is that the Azure Cielo qPCR was stress tested 1,000 times. They did the same assay qPCR over and over 1,000 times. And what they found out was the data that they obtained on the first run and on the 1,000th run was very similar. The standard deviations were very small. So this tells you that the machine is reliable and it's reproducible, right? And these are some images of the onboard touchscreen on the machine itself. So the machine has a large touchscreen, which you can use to run the machine as a standalone instrument. You don't necessarily need to connect it to an external PC. You can key in your cycling temperatures, you can choose your dye channels, load in your plate, and run the machine as it is. Okay, so this will save you some space. Wireless connectivity, the machine can be connected to the Wi-Fi. Okay, so when you're connected to the Wi-Fi, right, this allows you to have remote access. So you can monitor your runs even when you're not physically beside the machine. And you will also be able to import your run files once the machine is done when you're far away. This can be done. And there is also a feature on the Azure that lets you to email run files back to yourself once the run is completed. Okay, so this is quite handy. Um, Handy, and you can analyze your results wherever you are. All right, and this is the Azure Cielo Manager software. Um, so of course, you can use the machine as a standalone machine, but you can also have a PC connected to the machine. And the Azure Cielo Manager software will also allow you to do analysis. Okay, it's an intuitive and easy to use software with a lot of different applications on it. And yeah, so that's all the materials that I have for the presentation so far. These are some of the Azure Cielo selected users that we have globally. So we have a lot of different universities. Some of these you may recognize. We have some private diagnostic labs as well. Any questions so far?
Okay, thank you, Pritpal. So
Yes.
now the floor is open for everyone to ask questions. So you can type a question in the chat box.
I'd also like to add, if you would like us to provide you with a demonstration, either a hands-on demonstration or a virtual demonstration, this can be arranged. You can contact us and you can either come to our office or we can bring the machine to your place and give you a demo.